dominated by digital screens and instant gratification, there's an increasing divide in our human connections and difficulties expressing our vulnerabilities. Letters to My Podcast explores the tapestries of storytelling by transforming written letters into spoken word. Hello, Nkaujoua everyone from the Letters to My Podcast. This is Xai, your podcast host. We have a very special guest today. Her name is NK. NK, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for
Thank you for
having
joining
me.
us. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Thank you for taking this special day on a Friday in the June of summer. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm chilling. I'm outside. They're doing this interview. NK, so I'm chilling. I'm in New Jersey
I
right now.
love that.
Kanya
I'm in Milwaukee.
Okay, cool. Well, it's good to know. We're happy that we're able to talk halfway across the country. So today we're going to be interviewing you, and I'm so excited to have you on, NK. There's so many questions I have and so many things that I'm hoping we can share with the guests in terms of filmmaking and storytelling, okay? So I'm going to read NK's bio. Nkaujoua Xiong is a Midwest-based Hmong filmmaker with a passion for human-centered documentaries. Specializing in cinematography and lighting, she works as a freelance filmmaker, taking on roles as director, cinematographer, grip, and production assistant on various productions. She has worked with the Hmong American Women's Association to capture the Say MKE Milwaukee camps in uplifting Southeast Asian girls and LGBT plus community. Xiong has assisted in the documentation of several Black Arts (MKE) Milwaukee events and performances, which aim to increase the availability and quality of African Americans' arts and culture. Her latest short documentary, English title Why My Dad Loves Me, and the Hmong title Gutsi Tsoke Lu, is an intergenerational story capturing the shared history and resilience of the Hmong community and a father's quiet devotion to his family. It recently screened at Cam Fest, where it was awarded the Lani Deng Award for Social Issues Documentary. NK, committed to storytelling, focuses on uplifting narratives that highlight the Hmong, immigrant, and BIPOC experience. BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. NK, again, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So NK, when you heard about the podcast Letters to Mai, what kind of made you wanted to join and intrigue about the podcast?
I think, well, a personal story is that I used to write a lot of letters as a kid. It was like, it's one of my love languages. And so when I heard like letters to my, I was like, I watched a clip on social media and I was like, this is such a sweet way to like connect generations and connect Hmong people. Yeah. Cause I feel like within the Hmong community, we don't often like speak with like words of affection or affirmation. And so I thought this was just so beautiful and such a beautiful way to like, again, connect generations.
No, it's so important. Hmong people are so great at storytelling, but when it comes to vulnerability and the deeper level stuff, I think it's difficult. I know there's a lot of trauma, and so this is one of those podcasts for us to be. I mean, we are lucky because we get the chance to have two worlds in a sense, having the refugee experience and the American experience, and we have that experience versus the new generation who don't have that lived experience. So it's our turn, NK. All right, so I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions. So, beginning the podcast, so listeners understand, each guest dedicates a letter to someone. So, NK, who is this individual or individuals that you dedicated a letter to, and why?
So I'm dedicating my letter to my parents, my dad, Tou Xiong, and my mom, Mai Vu. I wanted to dedicate this letter to them again because I think with us younger generation, with the older generation, we don't like often use like words of like affection. And so I felt like this was a great opportunity to kind of tell them about myself and all the things that I'm grateful for and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. You're grateful for, and also just to share your story because oftentimes, because they don't share their story, then we learn, oh, maybe we should share our story. We normalize it. And in a sense, we have to, whether it's unbreak the chain of trauma or unbreak the chain of silence. So I'm happy you're here.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, NK. So go ahead and introduce us via Hmong and jump into your letter. And I'm ready. I'm excited to listen as well as a guest.
This is a love letter to Lauren Lee, my parents. Dear Dad and Mom, I am now 26, around the age of when you two had me, number 6 of 9. Even though I am now at an age where I'm capable of taking care of myself, I still yearn for the both of you with the heart of a little child. My childhood was a happy one because of you. We spent our days out in the sun catching fish in the creek with soda cans cut in half, hanging and swinging off tree branches, and playing a version of jacks, but with rocks. I was growing up in a different land than the one you had known, yet I was inheriting bits and pieces of your childhood in Laos. Then I became a teenager. I was definitely one of your more stubborn and different children. I hated wearing dresses and preferred romping around outdoors instead of helping around the house. I was struggling with my identity as a Hmong daughter. The mothers at church raised their eyebrows at how I defied the perfect Nya image as a young girl. I knew how much this troubled you, especially you, Mom, who had to carry the weight of cultural expectations, a mother raising a daughter. I attempted to run away from home a few times, but I always came back shortly. You probably didn't even notice. Before I knew it, I was off to college, where I took the seat of not only my dream, but your dreams with me. I discovered the realities of living away from home, learning to cook for myself without the pressure of being a Nya, but simply to survive. Working to the point of exhaustion and being rushed to the hospital, and meeting several people who had more than me. I grew envious of them and the things I didn't even know I never had. I secretly held bitter feelings toward you about the things I couldn't get as a child. But then our short documentary came to me at the perfect time. I was 22 and soon to graduate. As I sat in my bedroom listening to hours of your interviews, I cried and cried. I felt embarrassed about the bitter feelings I had harbored, and I threw them away. Your experiences came to me when I was lost, struggling with my identity as a minority and navigating how to be a young adult. I learned how you two had gone through so many hardships and challenges, coming to a different country as children where you didn't know the culture and language, working low-paid jobs and sacrificing your time and the things you loved just so we could have those things. All I could think about was how extremely grateful I am and my precious childhood, how you both managed to create such a loving home for us. Post-graduation life isn't any easier. There are many days and nights of uncertainty, self-doubt, and questioning if filmmaking is viable for me. Instead of pushing me one way or another, you both patiently wait, sit with, and encourage me as I walk a path most in our community haven't before. And after so many years since I first left home, I finally see the seeds of our dreams bear fruit, and I get to share it with you. My dream since I was a child was to make you proud, and hopefully that would make you proud of yourselves. Now I also hope to give you the opportunities and experiences you couldn't have as young adults because you were surviving for us. And I hope when you reflect on your life, you'll remember the moments we traveled for the documentary, the beautiful places we saw, the many kind, welcoming people we met and collaborated with, and all of the special small moments in between. As an extension of the both of you, this letter is also to our entire family, my siblings, my niece and nephews, and to my future children, if any. There may come a day when you realize that your parents were once young. They're flawed, complex human beings. You might feel grateful, bitter, heartache, and nostalgic, all fine feelings to have. When you reach this point, I gently encourage you to ask them about their lives, what they were like as a child, the places and memories they long for, and all the pockets of adventure they've experienced. You'll realize how much of them are reflected in you, how you're different or want to be different. Just remember that they are also still figuring things out, and to give them the grace that they have given you. And to remember that a rich life is not only material goods and money, but a wealth of experiences, deep connections and relationships, and feeling all the emotions life has to offer. And as I finish reflecting at this point in my life, I see it now. I see all of the energy, sacrifice, and love you poured into us. You showed me love transcends differences and kindness is free. I know in your hearts you desire to have done more and do more for us, your kids. I want to say today you've done more than enough. You've worked hard. You've accomplished what you set out to do and more, and I'm really proud of you. I'm so fortunate and grateful to have grown up with two amazingly kind, loving, and silly human beings. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for your love, your sacrifices, for showing me what family is, for everything. Love from Gonsua.
Wow. Great job, NK. That got me tearing up at the middle, and I have to just read it. When you were talking about our parents being like flawed and giving them grace, and also for us being open. I thought of the word curiosity, asking a question, because it made me thought about my struggles with that too as well. That I don't know how do you say anger in Hmong? How do you say that? 体了,
Tisha.
体现到了, so a lot of time with just projection, the teacher will want the word projection is, think of a projector, right? You are the projector, you're putting your emotions onto someone else, so that's what projection means. In truth, that you are actually in pain and suffering yourself. But the thing is, we're all in pain and suffering, so I think that's what grace is. How was your experience writing the letter for you? And when's the last time you wrote a letter like this?
Man, I was definitely crying. I think because, well, I've never really shared about
Sorry.
those. I think I mentioned in my letter those secret
Right.
feelings of like, bitterness towards my parents. I've never really spoken to them about that because I don't want them to be sad because, like I said at the end, like they've given me everything that I
Yeah.
needed. And it was all things that I never even knew that I, never had. So it was definitely emotional. The last time I wrote a letter to them was actually Christmas last year. I wrote two separate letters, one for my dad and one for my
Okay.
mom. And I very much said, I said similar things, but in a different way, specifically to my dad. So my dad has a heart condition and he was going through a lot of health issues last year. And in the letter I wrote to him that I just want him to take care of himself. And one day, if there is a day when I walk down the aisle, I would love to have my dad by my side. But yes, that was the last time I wrote them a letter.
That's very heartfelt. So I'm happy that you wrote this letter. I think a lot of letter writing, the reason why I want people to write letters in the podcast is because when you write letters, you're pouring your vulnerabilities and your truth into that. So thank you for that. All right. So NK, we're gonna jump into the questions. We're gonna focus on your childhood first, about the paths that helped molded you and shaped you who you were. And also talk a little bit about your dreams as such a kid.
Yeah, so my childhood was very magical, as I was explaining in the letter. We were outside a lot as kids, swinging in the trees, playing with rocks. I remember we used to like play bote is what we called it, where we're literally just like living out how we imagined our parents lived in Teichenbot, right? So we would like eat grass
Nope, too funny.
and like chop it with rocks. And my parents, as I mentioned, also came when they were young. My dad came when he was like 15, and I think my mom came when she was 10. And so they were also learning, I guess, the American culture. They had access to like different things. And one of the things my dad had access to was a camcorder. And my dad's a mechanic, so he really loves playing with anything like technical. And so I grew up my parents would record me and my siblings when we were younger. Essentially, at some point, that camera landed in my hands. And that's how I kind of became interested in like recording life. And as a child, I also really enjoyed storytelling. I really loved reading. I loved being at the library. I loved being surrounded by books.
Did your parents take you there?
No, they didn't. But I think the thing is, my mom, she's a very good storyteller. She's very expressive when she tells stories. And so I think essentially that kind of all like mixed together, right? The camera side, my mom is a storyteller, my love for reading and for storytelling, and all of that just like came together. And I remember as a child, my dream was to be an author and an illustrator. And I would like write stories and send them to my librarian along with a letter. I would be like, "Dear Mr. Pete, this is my new story. So I think really, again, like it was a mix of all those things coming together.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's so important, and pivotal. So thank you. In past experience, what broke you? What molded you? Or what helped you reclaim your power?
I gotta think about this one a little bit. So I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
reference my letter and my documentary a lot. In my letter, I mentioned how when I went off to college, I learned or I met a lot of people who had a lot more than I had, right? College kind of was my first experience being surrounded by a predominantly white crowd. The film program was very white, and I grew up in a pretty diverse education system. There's a good mix of Black, Asian, a lot of Hmong people, Hispanics, so like very diverse. And so I never really like felt like I was a minority until I went to
Mm,
college. And my first experiences of like, I guess you could my first experiences of like, realizing that I was a minority was actually among my closest white
right.
friends. And again, like I don't think they were like trying to be malicious. I think because it was probably a lot of our first times learning how to interact with one another and
Mm-hmm.
learning, this is kind of like what being a minority looks like, or like what being a white person among
Yeah.
minorities looks like, right? And so I think that's why I started to harbor these bitter feelings towards my parents, because I would see like, oh, like this friend has this and her parents can provide this for her. And my mom and my dad can't do that. Like, why couldn't they do that? And so that was something in a way that kind of broke me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say another
Tell me.
experience that kind of plays into that. During my interviews with my parents during the making of the documentary, I asked my parents to leave a message for one another. And this was this was a moment that really broke me. My parents, they both said very similar things to each other. And they both they both apologized to
Aw,
one another and said, I'm sorry. I wish I could do more for you.
yeah.
I wish I could have done more for you. And that really broke me. And that really made me realize like that these bitter feelings that I had harbored, that I had held within me, like it kind of like melted all of that away, because I realized that like my parents have always intended and have always wanted to do more. It just wasn't within their means. And even within their means, they were able to provide and like help me thrive essentially.
No, it's always so that's a journey. So we'll definitely
Mhm.
break into that more as well. Thank you for sharing that. So I appreciate that. Yeah. So, okay, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna ask you a couple questions about trauma and grief. Have you had any experiences with that? Because oftentimes in a Hmong culture, we tend to not talk about grief. We just go to funerals and that's it. It's almost like for as a kid, it
Mhm.
was just a routine for me. And the only time that shocked me the most was when I don't know if you know, during a funeral at one point, everyone just starts crying and they let out the tears. Like
Mhm.
that was the first time I see my dad cried, so things like that. So share more about your experiences with grief, trauma, or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I just had to second what you said. Like, I feel like as a child, I was just there
Mm-hmm.
and then would be that moment where people are just crying and I'm just kind of like, what is going on? Right. And I think because like, maybe because it's like, we're in like our first, second generations of Hmong American people here. Like, we're still like trying to understand grief and like trauma. Right.
Mm.
But yeah, so my dad actually almost passed away in February. He was getting a pacemaker placed into his chest to help with his heart condition, which I had mentioned. It was like, I think there was like a 90%, 95% chance maybe that like, there's a 95% chance that it would be successful. So like there's like very like hardly any like anything that could go wrong, essentially. And so the first day he had the surgery, he came back good. My mom was there with him the entire time. And Everything was good until, like, later in the day, they noticed that some of the wires for the pacemaker had moved, and so they had to do the surgery again. And so the second day, they opened him up and they did the surgery again, fixed the wires. We're about to close him, and then they opened him up again and then closed him. Essentially, we really don't know what happened, but my mom, it was, like, around, like, I remember getting this text from my sister in our sibling group chat. It was, like, 8 PM after my dad had had the second surgery.
Mhm.
She had texted my siblings and she was like, "Oh, hey, like, can someone go stay with mom because she's feeling a little anxious because dad is taking a little longer to wake up," right? And my brother May, my third brother, had gone to stay with my mom, but he only stayed till 12 because he went straight from work and was very exhausted. And so it was like around 1 or 2 a.m. My mom had to help my dad to the bathroom, and then he was in the bathroom, but he was taking very long. And so my mom went to go check in on him and saw that he was very pale. And my mom was like, "Do you need help getting back to the bed?" And my dad was like, "Tominjijo," like, just wait a moment. And then my mom was like, "No, like, let me help you." And so my mom helped him back to the bed. And again, he was very pale, slow
Mhm.
to responding. And so she called in the nurse, and a nurse came in, and my mom was like, "You need to check on my husband." The nurse was like, "Oh, he's probably just exhausted from the 2 surgeries, from the anesthesia, and, like, they had given him some Benadryl as well." And my mom was like, "No, please check on him." And so the nurse was like, "Okay, I'll try to get a body temperature reading." And the nurse couldn't get a body temperature reading on my dad. And so
Mm.
that's when more nurses flood in, and it was very chaotic. And essentially, my dad was rushed to the ICU, and my mom had called some of my siblings, and they had all been there. And I was here in Milwaukee, and, like, I didn't know about this until like 7 a.m. in the morning the next day. But I just remember when I was driving over, I was crying, but I told myself, like, I'm not going to cry in front of my family. I think because we're all very emotional. My mom is a very emotional person, and we
Mhm.
all grew up
Mhm.
with my mom under her care.
Mhm.
So I was like, as soon as someone starts crying, the rest of us are going to
Mm.
start crying. So I'm not going to cry when I get there. And I just remember when I got there, seeing my dad in, like, his state, because when he was at the first hospital in the ICU, they had told my mom, like, it's either he gets breathing tubes or he can pass at any moment. Yeah. And so we went with the breathing tubes, and I just remember seeing him in such a terrible state with the breathing
Mhm.
tubes down his throat. My mom was in the room with me, and she had, like, whispered, or she had said into his ears, "Kutun chai kon so to cho," like, and I was holding my dad's hand, and she told him, like, "If you can hear me, squeeze your daughter's hand." And I could see my dad kind of, like, scrunch his face, but, nothing else. And I think it's always I was talking to my, Laotian friend about how, like, at the hospital, it was just, like, our entire
Mhm.
family in the waiting room, and she was like, "That's how it always is with Asian families, you know?"
That's how we roll.
We're always like, yeah, we're always overcrowding the waiting room. But yeah, and then my dad woke up in the afternoon, fortunately. And I must say that, like, it just that moment really showed me my mom what she's capable of, cuz she was the one who fought for my dad's life, honestly. Like, her English is fairly good, but, like, bigger words, it's harder and all that stuff, but she was the one who, like, told the nurses, like, "You have to check on my husband." When the doctor came in and, like, was kind of dismissive towards my mom, like, she, like, again, fought for my dad. And so I think it was honestly, like, our first time as a family really experiencing, like, a near death experience. It felt very much like it was pulled out of a drama, right? A Korean drama or something.
Yes, exactly. No, those experiences could be very traumatic, and any anticipation or any thought of news, even if you think the word death, your body's gonna feel the word death. So everyone felt that. So
Mhm.
I'm so sorry that went through it. Those are traumatic. I'm happy we have the family. And part of the reason why we talk about grief is that often we don't talk about grief. So thank you for talking about this. I guess my comment to you is just those things are very difficult. Those things really shape you. And I can't imagine you and your family not having your dad at this moment. So what happened afterwards? How did
Mhm.
you all go through the process of whether it's healing, having a second chance? I don't know how y'all viewed it.
Yeah, so when my dad was in the hospital, I had just found out that we had gotten into a few film festivals. And I remember, like, before my dad went into the hospital, I was, like, very excited to, like, go and tell him about it. And, like, I just, like I remember because the Wisconsin Film Festival was coming up, and I was just, like, trying to, like, mentally prepare myself in the case that my dad wasn't there.
You're going through
I
that.
know. I know, and just thinking back on it, like, makes me very teary-eyed because, like, I had just, like, not anticipated anything like that at all. I think my siblings and I were definitely, like, we wanna spend more time with our dad. We're all very busy because, we have our own families and whatnot, but we definitely are trying to spend more time with my dad, and I very fortunately was able to take my dad to the Wisconsin Film Festival,
Nice.
to the Capital City Film
What?
Festival,
Yeah.
to Campfest. Like, it's very
Wait,
special to
before
me.
you we gotta talk about that because oftentimes I remember as a kid, my parents didn't come to my sports games and all that stuff because they were busy and working and so forth. What does it mean as a
Mhm.
child of refugee immigrants? I have the most proudest moment when I graduated Columbia in New York, and my parents came and visited. First of all, I didn't think they were ever gonna come, right? And okay, it was the
Mhm.
best, the most beautiful experience. I only went to that school, so Tou Mai, so that'd be happy for me. You know, it's like a brand name. So share that moment for you.
Yeah, well, every time I've gone to a film festival, my parents have gone with me, and that has been very, very special to me, to be able to bring my parents to new places, to meet new people, and to have new experiences. And I think I mentioned this in the letter where, like, my parents, when they were my age, they couldn't live that,
Hmm.
I guess, that idealized American young adult
Right.
life where you get to travel and meet new people and all that stuff. So yeah, like I said, I've gotten to take them to 5 different festivals, and one the most notable, I will say, at least from my observation of them, was the Fresh Coast Film Festival, the Wisconsin
Hmm.
Film Festival, Capital City, and Campfest. Each one with their own different thing. Fresh Coast really we were in Marquette, Michigan, and so we were surrounded by Lake Michigan, and my
Nice.
parents just kept talking about how much it reminded them of Laos
Yeah.
and how much they wanted to go back to Laos. The Capital City Film Festival, there was a Hmong organization there. Shout out to them, Hmong Family Association, I believe, of Lansing, Michigan, and they hosted a meet and greet with us, and they were just so warm and welcoming to my parents and to me.
Nice.
And then Camp Fest, where I got to take my dad back to California, where he originally first landed when he came to the US. And he got to see San Francisco. And we went to Sacramento to visit his cousin, who was the one that sponsored him here to the US. So, really, just like all these like wonderful moments of being able to give my parents the experiences that they
Hmm.
might have never had.
No, it's fascinating. It's wonderful, and it's gratifying too as well. Not for yourself, but also for your family. That's one of whether it's core principle, core values of the Hmong culture that I appreciate, and it helps me because I'm a community organizer. NK it helps me to have those
Mhm.
foundations essentially. So it helps a lot. Thank
Mhm.
you for sharing your past experience. So we're going to transition to the present realities. It's going to be on exploring current identities, struggles, and passion. NK. What are your identities and why would you consider these your identities and why are identities important to you?
So I would say my identities are I am a Hmong filmmaker. I am a Hmong daughter with a bit of a tomboyness to her. A Hmong storyteller. Those are my identities.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Why are they your identities?
Storytelling is what I want to do. It's what I'm doing, and I want to really create a space and really break barriers with Hmong stories and Hmong experiences, right? And I feel like with my documentary, Why My Dad Loves, it's just a small part, a small piece of the bigger Hmong experience. But again, like I didn't growing up, I didn't learn a lot about my history, about my culture at school. And school is where we spend most of our
Hmm.
time as kids, right? And so I feel like a way to do that, a way to reach younger generation is through storytelling and through visual storytelling. As for a Hmong daughter with a tomboy, a bit of a tomboy hint in her, that's my identity because I was always just a
Right.
tomboy growing up. Um, and I struggled a lot with it when I was younger. I've come to accept it a lot more, that I'm not like the Hmong typical daughter. And that's just who I am.
Yes, right. Well, I want to expand on that too as well because I think there's what people don't know is that the Native American has something called two spirits, right? So it's LGBTQ
Mhm.
or queer or men loving men and women loving women. And this has been going on for centuries. So what that tells me, there are different spectrums of identity. So we all share
Mhm.
masculinity and femininity traits. So you just lean towards one other, but in the day, you are who you are. So I think it's wonderful. And
Mhm.
it's a struggle that I struggle with because I lean towards the emotional and the feeling side of it. And I will struggle like, oh, I'm too much of a woman, that stuff, but I realized that NK, it's just fucking strength, it's what makes me able to connect
Mhm.
with people. And at the end of the day, everyone has a mother, everyone has a father,
Mhm.
and we can share both traits. I would love to hear more about your project. People don't know. I know what film festivals are, so you're gonna have to back up a little bit, about like your
Mhm.
projects that you're working on, why you're going to film festivals, and why is it important to have recognition? You know how you go to those events. Like, talk to us more about that.
Yeah, so my short documentary is called Why My Dad Loves. The Hmong title is Gutzi Tsokehlu. It was originally my senior thesis film, but I received a grant from Milwaukee Film to expand on it. It's a story, well, it's a documentary. It captures my father's experience as a Hmong refugee and immigrant. He came to the US when he was 13 years old and he married my mom and they raised 9 children, but my dad barely ever spoke about his life. When he did, it
Mm-hmm.
would always be in like brief moments, very quick, very to the point, nothing ever in depth. And so with my senior project, I decided that, this is the perfect time to really get to know my dad in a more deeper way, and capture it and have it. Um, and I've always wanted to just make a film about my dad because he's such a cool, funny guy.
He's very I don't
So,
know the way ingenious. He can just create things from nothing. So I love it.
yeah. So we've been able to go to a lot of amazing film festivals. Film festivals are where a bunch of it's a festival where like we just watch films. We support each other as filmmakers. We connect with the local community there and really just like uplift one another through filmmaking. And
Yeah, I just want to learn more about your experience. So I think I'm more thinking along the line of the new experience and also you
mhm,
being going back to what you're saying, you're in a mainly Western Mika environment and how you navigated that and
mhm.
why is it important for one person or a BIPOC person to go in those spaces?
I So the film industry is already a predominantly white space, and being a person of color and being Hmong and being able to be in that space and break into that space has been really rewarding.
Right.
And really also just like at a few film festivals now, or at many film festivals now, there have been a lot of white people who have come up to us and have been like, "Thank you for sharing your story.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about the Hmong people, or I didn't know, or your story like transcends like so many things, I think something that I've said before is that the one thing that I really want people to take away from the film is to be kind. And to be kind because it was the small moments in like my dad's childhood, the small moments of
Hmm.
kindness that really shaped who he is and how he loves others. And I think that message really speaks to a lot of people, no matter what background or race or ethnicity.
Thank you so much for sharing that, NK. I really appreciate that. I think the one word that I really took out from there is kindness, and I think it's so important that kindness is a foundation to all of us. And what would you tell to those people who don't have kindness, who did not have kindness in their childhood? Sorry, I ask a hard question
That is a
sometimes.
hard question. That is a very hard question. I think with my dad specifically, there were many moments where people were mean to him, and there were very few moments where people were kind to him. And it's hard to say, but I do feel like my dad, through those small
Oh, and
moments,
NK, if you feel comfortable, can you tell a little bit snippet of how people are mean to them? There's a specific reason why, or you don't want to disclose too much.
when my dad was growing up, he was living in Laos, a very impoverished country at the time. And he had people in his family who said very mean remarks to him. They said things like, "Oh, because you are like this, because you are like this, you're never going to be prosperous with us. You're never going to have wealth or riches." And those words really, I do think those words really affected my dad. But then there were also moments from his aunt and uncle, my great aunt and uncle, but his aunt and uncle, who fed him, who clothed him. And those were very, very small acts of kindness that really shaped his way of how he loves other people. And
Right.
so I think again with like how to address people who haven't had any kindness in their childhood, it's really hard to say. It's really hard to like
No, I think you said it, NK. It's just through trials and tribulation, through oppression, through discrimination,
Mhm.
your dad, chose kindness as a route, even
Yeah,
if it was 10%, 15.
essentially, yes. Choosing to be kind. And I actually asked my dad a while ago, like, just because I always want to check in that he's okay with me sharing his story. Dad, why do you want to share your story?
Hmm.
And he said that a lot of people don't know about like the Hmong experience, right? The
That's right.
hardships of the Hmong people. And he said that he wants to show people that you can overcome your past traumas, your past
Yeah,
hardships, all the challenges, all the obstacles. And so that really stuck with me.
I think that's very powerful, and thank you for sharing that too as well. Because so not everyone has the two-parent household. Some
Mhm.
may have a one parent, and if it's a mother or a father as a single parent, it affects your psyche, affects your upbringing, and so forth. And I worked in foster care and child welfare for 9, 10 years in family court. So I've seen separations of family. I've seen the unfortunate outcome of a single parent household versus a
Mhm.
two-parent household. So thank you for sharing that.
My dad actually mentioned how that in his childhood, he witnessed a lot of Hmong men mistreating their wives. And as a child, he like decided in his heart that he wasn't going to do that. I remember during our interview, I had asked him like, "Dad, why do you love mom?" And my dad, he draws a lot back. Like he draws from his childhood a lot.
Hmm.
And I'm just gonna say this, he draws from being an orphan a lot. And he mentioned how when he was an orphan, he lost his mom. My dad lost his mom. And that really, was very canon in his life. He saw how Hmong men would mistreat their wives. And he was like, these are like, the mother to so many like Hmong children, right? And so my dad said, the reason why I love your mom is because I lost my mom, and I saw how these Hmong men mistreated their wives, and I never want to be like that. I want you guys to have a good mom. I want you guys to have a mom who loves you and pours everything into you because I didn't have that. And I was very fortunate. I'm very fortunate that I have a great mom, a superhero mom.
Absolutely. I think those are also powerful, and thank you for sharing your side of the story as well. Because as much as we focus on in this podcast, we focus on all aspects of all spectrum of life, and I'm happy to hear that because oftentimes we will only hear the negative stories. So thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that.
Totally.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that, NK. So I'm gonna move us to self-love and self-compassion. And there's a quote that I love. It really made when you were talking made me thought about this. So this quote is by I believe the professors Neff and Dam are their last name. It's the quote says, "Self-compassion and self-love involves treating yourself with the same kindness, concern, and support you will show a good friend or family. When faced with difficult life struggles or confronting personal mistakes, failures, and inadequacies, self-compassion and self-love responds with kindness rather than harsh judgment, recognizing that imperfection is part of the shared human experience." What does that quote mean to you? How does it connect to you?
Well, I definitely need that reminder every now and then. The part that really reaches or touches me is the part where it says, like, essentially, like, treating yourself how you would treat your friend, right? And I think it's very important because I feel like a lot of Hmong people, a lot of Hmong elders, kind of sometimes they don't see their worth, right?
Mm,
I think a lot of the times it's because they came to a place, to a country where essentially they were told that you're uneducated, right? And I see this a lot in my parents as well, where they're kind of like, I'm dumb. I didn't get an education. Um, and I see this in myself too, like, this inferiority complex, not being enough. Essentially, hence why my parents kind of feel like they left that message of why, saying sorry to each other. I wish I could do more for you. And I think we as, you know, I think as a Hmong community, we need to give ourselves some more grace and to remember that, like, we went through a lot,
you know?
especially our elder. I do wish that, like, I do hope that my parents are proud of themselves and all that they've achieved, as I am also learning how
Mhm.
to be proud of myself and to be okay with saying I'm proud of myself.
Yeah, no, those things are powerful. And you brought up the word inferiority complex.
Mhm.
Some people would also imposter syndrome. And then one of my mentors, social worker, she called it macro invalidation. Macro means your overall, invalidation means you are invalidating yourself, meaning you are not good enough, or you're saying what you're doing, you feel fake. So I've struggled with that too as well. I think I'm not good enough and all that. And then I love how you put the word grace because that's a word that I think about too as well. And I also think about your why. Remember the why of what you're doing because it's your cause. No one can take that away
Mhm.
from you. It's your story. So a lot of the time, I think these things are whether it's from the Western media, whether it's from our immigrant refugee experience, and all that stuff. It's I can break this down more, but I want it to, as short word. I'm gonna say it's a social construct, meaning it's
Mhm.
created by people, just
Mhm.
like race was created by people. So just remember that. And I want to tell everyone who created it. It's almost always the people who has power in the community. So but once you all can go to that liberation and freedom, trust me, y'all, y'all can get through this. And this is part of the podcast. Any thoughts on that?
No, definitely thank you for sharing that. I think, again, with a lot of, or with my parents specifically, I think they definitely need to apply more grace to themselves. And I mean, I remember when we did a recording
Okay.
recently for WUWM Lake Effect, and my parents were like, "Why us? We're just ordinary people." And yeah, that's exactly why. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, your parents' story is that's what resonates. It's part of the American story. We have a lot of
Mhm.
issues with ICE right now, which is really frustrating. And everyone talk to your legislators and so forth and fight against that because they're coming for them. We're next.
Mhm. No, I think again with the message of my dad's documentary is that, like, I know everyone has their own opinions, has their own thoughts with immigration and immigrants, but I think again, the documentary really touches on being kind to one another, even especially because we don't know everyone's stories, right? And learning, I think we're afraid of what's different from us, what we don't know, right? And I mean, a lot of people who have seen my dad's documentary, they've been like, "Wow, like,
Hmm.
I never knew that." And so I think, again, being kind to one another, especially when we don't know what's going on, is very important.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Let's transition to the future aspiration, sharing your hopes. goals and dreams for the future. And I always like to read the definition aspiration, which is a strong desire, longing, or aim or ambition. Intellectual aspiration. Synonyms can be craving, yearning, or could also mean a goal or an objective that is strongly desired. An example is the presidency has always been in her aspiration since childhood. So for you, NK, I want you to use I statements and talk about happy moments you're proud of, goals and achievement, and use I statements. I'm proud that I blank.
I am proud that I finished this documentary and that I'm sharing it. I think it's one thing to finish it and then a bigger thing to share it, right? Takes courage, takes a lot of courage, especially when you feel very, or especially in the film industry as a person of color, not knowing what the next steps are, what reactions are going to be. It takes a lot of courage.
Thank you. And those are really great achievement, and that's good. Next, I want you to fill in the blank. You don't have to say all of them. You can say, I want, I desire, I yearn, I will be, I aim to be. Again, I want, I desire, I yearn, I will be, I aim to be.
I desire to continue telling Hmong stories and Hmong experiences. I think there's not a lot of Hmong representation
Mm-hmm.
in, American media. And so I think it's like the perfect time to do it, It's our 50th year anniversary.
Woohoo!
And I mean, there have been, like Joua,
Mm-hmm.
Bitterroot, a lot of breakthroughs right now. And so it's really
On
cool to see that. Yeah.
exactly.
That's what I
What are
strive to
those?
do.
People don't know, may not know who those are. What those you just mentioned.
Yeah, Joua Lee Grande, amazing Hmong producer in Minnesota, and Bitterroot. Sorry, what are those?
So sorry. Well, I mean, who are they? Tell it like someone who doesn't know who they are or what they
Okay,
are.
okay. Jolie Grande is a producer, filmmaker from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and she just finished her short documentary, Te, which is honest. It's touching on like Hmong farmers in the Twin Cities, and again, like there's a lot of emotion to it, right? It's a very short documentary, but there's a lot of emotion to it, and it follows a few people, a few Hmong elders, and really like there's a moment in the film where one of the Hmong farmers talks about how he again says that "gudwa," like I'm dumb, but then
Right. No.
he has such a rich knowledge in like how to farm, and it's like you're really not, like you have so much to offer. And then Bitterroot is a feature film that is centered around Hmong people, and it's been playing in different areas of the nation, so keep an eye out for it. Really cool, very amazing film about like a parent-child kind of relationship as well.
Absolutely. When you were talking about that, it makes me think language is so powerful at NK. Yeah, if you don't speak the language, you
Mhm.
can't promote yourself, you can't provide your service. It's so important, and also a lot of oppression too. I just want to make one comment because similar to you, I love your focus on African American or Black people and working with them as well. I
Mhm.
have such a strong affinity with them too as well, and it made me think about Black inventors. You know how America has never uh highlighted the stories. Like a black person made peanut butter, a black person made the golf tee, right? Things like that. I know
That's so cool.
it's amazing, so cool, and then it's just so many things that they have done. So that we're not highlighting. So thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
And these are the stories that we want to get out. We're gonna transition to the future aspiration. I know you talked base a bit more about the things you want to do and continue to do, but I want to ask you more about what you foresight for yourself, your hopes, dreams, goals. What do you envision in terms of your impact? Tell us more.
Yeah, I think right now I really want to continue telling Hmong stories and Hmong experiences, and really try to try to show that the creative path is a path that Hmong people can take as well. I know we're
Yes.
in like our earlier generation, so we're kind of like whatever makes the most money, which makes sense,
You gotta eat.
But I think really just showing that like the creative path can
Mm-hmm.
also reward you differently. Maybe it's not like the most sustainable in terms of money, but it can open up doors.
Yeah.
You can really, I mean, like, just to be able to see Hmong people on the screen is so, like, I mean, like, I just remember, like, as a kid being like, I just want to see like a Hmong person on
Yeah,
TV.
that's it.
And I mean, like, we had all those like Hmong dub movies and like those
Hmm.
Hmong movies back then, which was really cool. And I mean, just even like having someone speak Hmong in like a TV show or something like that,
Right.
like it means so much. Like, you know, to have access to the Hmong language in that way, to have representation in that way. That's really why I want to continue telling our story.
Absolutely, we need you. And you look at the Chinese, I'm sure there's a lot of directors and production assistants at the beginning. I don't know that, but Bruce Lee to me is always the first one I think about. And
Mm-hmm.
now you fast forward to now, we have Sima Lu, we have Michelle Yoon, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone having leads, so it's just we're just following a template and so forth. So let's keep going. So we need you. You're creating a pathway for us. Okay. So we are going to transition to the wisdom sharing, imparting your advice and your inspiration to the next generation. NK, what advice would you give to someone who is starting on a similar path? What would you give them? Advice? What kind of trajectory would you recommend? And so forth.
I think of the advice that my dad gave me when I told him for the first time that I wanted to be a filmmaker and I
Mm-hmm.
was gonna go to college for film. What he told me was very like, it might sound brutal, but to me it really pushed me and made me see. I'll just share what he said to me, but he told me, you know, you're gonna have to work twice as hard, maybe even three times as hard as anyone else because, well, one, you're a minority, right? And then second, you're a woman. And I mean, it sounds very brutal, right? But then
Yes.
he softened the blow by saying, but then that means that everything else after it, the result will be twice as meaningful, three times as meaningful because you worked twice as hard, three times as hard. So that would be, I guess, my word of advice, words of encouragement.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think that's extremely important. That gave me chills. I think that's really good. But now talk about professionally. Just give a quick. This is what you A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yep, professionally as a filmmaker, really put yourself out there. You really have to put yourself out there. It takes a lot of courage. I'm an introvert, so I'm like an introverted extrovert. So like, you know, it's
Yeah.
really
But you have
hard
to
to
learn through it.
sometimes,
Yeah, right.
yeah, you really have to learn how to like put yourself out there, make connections. I think I was listening to Joua's
Yep.
podcast and honestly, like she provided the best advice, which is she's so wise, which is to really not see or to see networking as building your community. And that has really
That's
helped
right.
me as a starting filmmaker, as an emerging filmmaker.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I'm so happy Joe said because the thing is just like no, I always ask this too because for me, I'm a natural and just let people know this is my definition. Introversion and extroversion. It's not specifically just your ability to talk to people. It's where you get your energy from initially.
Mm-hmm.
So my energy is I get my energy from buildings, from trees, and from interacting with people. That's where I get my energy from
Mm-hmm.
first of all. But I had to balance that out. I had to learn as an adult living ADHD about stillness and calmness where I have to rest and cut out from things to take my time off. So that's a helps me
Mm.
recharge. We all just have different ways.
Yeah, that's really cool to
Yeah,
know. Thanks for your sharing.
that's powerful. Once you learn this and then you can learn because in truth, networking is really not about you. It's about curiosity. It's about
Mm-hmm.
tell me more about what you do. That's it. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, and that's why this podcast is the same thing with me. This is my obviously it's a dedication to the Hmong community, but it's also a dedication. Excuse me, it's my growth mindset. I just get to learn from you all, and you all do things I don't do every day.
Yeah, I've definitely been learning a lot from you. It's been very insightful.
It's both ways. Yes. Okay. So let's keep going. Okay, and okay, I'll move to the next question, and I want you to fill in the blank. I give you the next generation among girls and boy this wisdom blank because I want you to blank.
Yeah, I really want the next generation of Hmong boys and girls to be open to being vulnerable, essentially, this whole
Yes.
podcast.
Yes.
I think so. I grew up as a tomboy. I really hit my tomboy phase around like middle school.
Hold on, NK. Describe your definition and to tomboy so people know your definition.
So my definition of tomboy is a girl who has more masculine tendencies, or I guess like in the Hmong culture, what wouldn't be like a Hmong daughter? So like, silent, cooks,
Submissive.
docile,
Yeah.
submissive. Thank you. And so that's my definition of tomboy in context to the Hmong culture, right? And I really hope that Hmong girls and boys can be open to both stereotypically, masculine, feminine features, characteristics, attributes, to be okay, to not be ashamed if like, if you identify as a Hmong boy and you are a little bit more emotional. A lot of my brothers are very
Mm-hmm.
emotional guys
Right. Great.
because it really opens us up to vulnerability, to be able to have conversations with one another.
Right.
There's more I want to say.
Or what?
I think I think back to when I had a conversation with my mom for the first time about how painful it was for me during that period of my life, and when I was very, very much like, I wore boy clothing, and a lot of the moms at church and even my own mom disapproved of, the way I dressed. And I had that conversation with her, I think my second year in college, and I just told her like, mom, it was really hurtful when you guys would like side eye me or talk behind my back about the way I dressed, or why
Mm.
I wasn't with the other Hmong girls cleaning up in the kitchen and like cooking. And I just remember like my mom, she was very silent
Mm-hmm.
like for a while. And she was just taking in this information. And it was the first time that I actually felt like I saw eye to eye with my mom and kind of understood where she was coming. Her response was, I raised you like that because that's the only way I knew how to raise a daughter. Yeah. And so it was just like, I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
made me realize like, it's so funny because like, yeah, she didn't like me wearing boy clothes, but she was the one who bought me the boy clothes.
Is it fun? Oh,
Yeah, it's so funny. We would literally be at the store, and then like I'd be like looking through the boy clothes and she'd be standing next to me, kind of like, whatever. And then she'd be like, can't you like wear something prettier? And then like she's literally like grabbing the clothes from my hand and then taking them to check out. But yeah, like I was saying,
funny.
it was the first time like really saw and understood where my mom was coming from. And
And I'm sure it's the first time you
again,
stood up for yourself. You said your piece and
yeah.
truth. True. Okay.
And I think I want Hmong boys and girls to be vulnerable with their parents too, to be able to have those conversations with their parents. You might not agree, you might see differently, just as like in that moment, up until that moment, I had like, my mom and I had always like seen differently. And I think we still do, but we were able to like understand this is how my mom learned how to raise daughters. And that's what she was just trying to do with me. And my mom understood for the first time, oh, my daughter actually was very hurt from the things that I had done.
How did that give you grace to your mom? Because I know you talked about whether it's anger, frustration, targeted, or projection at them.
Yeah, I think I thought like for the longest time that my mom didn't love me because I was different, but hearing her say that for the first time, it really bridged the gap, you know?
But
And so like I felt like I was able to walk across that bridge and she was able to walk across that bridge.
exactly. This is more of a question for the next generation, the young kids.
Mhm.
Tell them why you did this and tell them, I don't know, something else about the importance of doing this.
Yeah. Like why I spoke to my mom about this. I don't remember how this conversation came up, but I just remember it was like me and my mom, we were at the dinner table. The dinner table is where the conversations happen in
Mm-hmm.
my family, specifically with me and my mom. I think I just so I still have a little sister, right? And my parents are parents until the end, right? And I was we were at a point, I think, in our relationship where we could openly talk about things. And I just wanted my mom to know because I don't know, just something
Mhm.
touched me that night, I guess.
Yeah. Tama.
Takakuman tusheyo.
Mhm.
Like I know that like she might like blame herself, but I didn't want her to see it as like blaming herself. I just wanted her to know. And I think for the next generation, we're gonna like, as you're growing up, you're gonna like have arguments with your parents. You're gonna see very differently than
Mhm.
your parents. But there's gonna like be a point in your life where you realize that like your parents were also just growing up as well. That they're
True.
growing up as you're growing up,
That's right.
right? And so you're gonna learn that they're learning things for the first time while you're learning things for the first time. And I have 9 siblings, so my mom and dad had to take care of 9 different
Yeah.
personalities, right?
Yeah.
And so something that worked on one kid is not gonna work on the next, might
Mhm.
not work on the
Mhm.
next. But yeah, just I think for the next generation to, when you get to that point, to give your parents grace when you open up to them, when they open up to you, because I want you to be able to have open conversations with your parents, you know, and to be able to talk to them about, to feel like you can talk to them about anything and everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's very powerful. We're gonna transition to the mindset, persistence, practice, and habits. Because these are all ingredients to success. Oftentimes, people only see the soup or the salad or the la or the pho being made. We don't see the ingredients, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we want to hear more about the mindset, persistent practice, and the habits that helps you be a mover and a shaker in the community. So, who inspires you to keep moving forward? I'll ask you a second question afterwards.
I would say that my little sister
Mm.
is who inspires me, who motivates me. So she actually has epilepsy. She had her first seizure when she was 4 years old. She is now 14, so it's been 10 years. Thank you. So my little sister, she is neurologically different. Um, she takes a little longer to learn things. She motivates me because, you know, there have been, there are a lot of doubts with people who are different, especially with the brain. But she's here. She's doing her thing. She's learning.
In spite of all
She's
those things, right? If the shame,
exactly,
embarrassment, she's
exactly,
doing it.
exactly. And my very first documentary was about her.
No
And she
way.
was
Okay.
she was 8 years old at the time. Something that sticks with me is when she said, she's happy to have her seizures, but she doesn't want to have them.
Mm,
Yeah, and this is like an 8-year-old
breaks my
girl,
fucking heart. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
She's so precious, and I don't ever want her to like feel dispirited or like, I want her to keep that spirit, that like she can still do anything. She can still do everything. Yeah.
No, I think
She
that's powerful. You say it. She's what?
she's my motivator.
Yes, 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 yes. I think it's always good to have those. I call those like the rock, my beacon, my guiding post, whatever they are. It just helps you remember where you come from. So those are always
Mhm.
important and why you're doing what you're doing. So the second question, what kind of mindset or habit for NK is essential for you to be successful or continue to be persistent in life that you can share with the next generation?
Again, this goes back to my little sister. It goes to the short documentary I made of her when she was 8 years old. My dad left a message for her, and I think this is kind of this is important to me as a person, as a filmmaker,
Mm.
as a storyteller. So my dad says, you have to commit yourself to learning. Even if you fall behind, that that is not the main issue. However, the only way to keep moving forward is to endure the hard times, persevere through challenging paths for yourself. That is the way to keep moving forward. Even those who are more skilled or talented, if they don't persevere, they can't move forward. Potential is measured by perseverance. Commit to learning. That's
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How did that affected you? And say that in your words.
Yeah, I think I want to be open to learning, to really continue working hard. And I think that's the best attribute that a lot of Hmong parents have given us, is that they work so hard. They work so hard.
Great.
And again, like it really like all comes around, being kind, working hard. You might have to work twice as hard, but the
Yeah.
rewards will be twice as meaningful.
Right.
If you don't, like my dad said, even if like you have the skills and you're talented, if you don't push yourself, if you don't persevere, you're not going to get anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's, as a filmmaker, there have been many times where I've wanted to give up, because filmmaking, it takes a long time to like,
Yes.
before you see like the results, right?
Hmm. It's like writing a book. You take two,
Yeah.
3 years, if not longer, and you still don't get paid
Hmm.
for it, depending on where you're at. So yeah.
Exactly. But yeah,
No,
those
absolutely. I think
words stick close.
one thing that I resonate with that story is the hard work. This is what I hated the most, NK, from high school. About sophomore year to about senior year, my parents, they had a janitorial service. So every Tuesdays and Thursdays, almost every week I would have to go. I was so mad. I barely got paid because obviously you don't ask for
Hmm.
money, just allowances. So it was the most frustrating thing. I couldn't hang out with my friends and all that stuff, but it taught me. I know it's hard working on stuff, but because I play sports, I call it the grind. So it puts you in
Hmm.
the grind. Now I know
Hmm.
that if I just put my time in, like nothing will ever beat me cleaning a goddamn bathroom and all that stuff. But you know, so it taught me. And then one
Yeah.
note for the listeners, just so you all know, I can't remember if he's the owner of this CEO of Toyota or the one who created Toyota, but as the CEO, he cleaned the bathrooms. So it's fascinating
Heck
because it taught
yeah.
me humility.
Yeah, honestly, it does. It really does. I think Hmong people are pretty humble people, I would say. And like that hard work, we're still building. Honestly, we are benefiting off of their hard work, our parents' hard
We are,
work, our grandparents' hard work. So a lot of
yeah,
props to them, a lot of
yeah.
credit to them.
And kids should be proud for a immigrant community coming 50 years to have as many judges, to have a mayor. We had a mayor of a large city, Oakland, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
that's just fascinating. And to us here, and my next goal, I know I'm just comparing from politics. I mean, and we have millionaires as well right now.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, I'm happy to see where we're going to be in the next 25 years.
mm-hmm. Me too.
Okay. So we are at the end. Any last words that you want to add? You want to tell the listeners, the guests, your family, or anyone?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having me on the podcast. This has been really fun. It's been very healing in its own way, and I look forward to seeing more, hearing more of your podcasts.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. Definitely share it and like it and share it with your community. We want to like pass this and share it with folks. And anyone you have that NK you want to join, be interviewed, let me know. So everyone, thank you again for listening to the Letters to My podcast, What Letters That Speaks and Stories That Heal. NK was our special guest today talking about filmmaking, grief, trauma, this importance of storytelling and her journey as a filmmaker. So NK, we really appreciate you for just sharing this everyday stories of Pepekawanga and also for next generation and your words of wisdom, passing on to them. Again, Letters to My is about self-discovery, storytelling, vulnerability, and letter writing dedication. We continue to invite you all to share your stories, connect with me, reach out to me, anyone else you think that could be interviewed. I would be more than happy to talk with them. A general statement that led us to my believes is that each generation builds upon the next. And one quote that I live by, one of my heroes, is Nelson Mandela, a South African revolutionary and nonviolent uh, protester. And he said, our children are our greatest hope we have, and the future belongs to them. So let's help them. And thank you for being part of that journey, NK. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on Letters to My Podcast Inaugural Season 1. We hope you can hear the power of storytelling, vulnerability, and self-expression rooted in the Hmong tradition. Let's continue to bridge the digital divide. I am Xai's niece. My name is Emma, and he is my uncle. He has helped me become more confident and made me come out of my comfort zone. I remember one day he took his nieces out to Dairy Queen. We decided to race back to the car, but my sister ran too fast and slipped under the car. It was memorable because it was funny, and those moments are something I would cherish forever. Letters to My Podcast is where vulnerability meets self-discovery. Self-discovery meets writing. Journaling, writing letters, or handwriting isn't just about writing what is on your mind or reliving your experiences. It is a medium for self-expression and self-reflection. Take a pause and time to think. For Xai, it began with journaling in college, a practice that became a lifeline. He poured his fears, failures, successes, self-doubt, and inspiring quotes on index cards. At one point, he had over 300 index cards in a shoebox. Writing helped him discover a powerful path to self-awareness, increasing his mental well-being and assisting in processing his emotions. As a social worker, pen and paper were his constant companion, helping him process interactions and to not miss anything important. Xai has benefited from the power of writing and wants to revitalize this practice and share it with you all. A little bit more about my uncle, who is the host. Xai, he, him, his, is a first-generation Hmong American man, social worker, and community organizer with over 12 years of experience. Xai is diagnosed with ADHD. He is passionate about building community through storytelling, self-expression, and the importance of affinity with their human counterpart. Xai believes each generation builds upon the next and seeks to uplift the next generation. One quote that embodies Letters to My Podcast. Our children are the greatest hope we have. The future belongs to them. Nelson Mandela, South African revolutionary. Letters to My Podcast focuses on passing wisdom and uplifting the next generation. It is our turn to pass the torch of wisdom and leave the world a better place than we found it. Letters impart our hopes, dreams, and future to the next generation. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and give a 5-star rating to help with the algorithm. Letters to My Podcast is on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Blue Sky, and Instagram. Disclaimer: Xai Yang, LMSW, is not establishing a therapist-client relationship with listeners through this podcast, and any reliance on the content is at your own risk. The views expressed in this podcast are Xai Yang's personal opinions and do not necessarily reflect the views of their employer or licensing board. For any mental health concerns or questions, please seek guidance from a licensed mental health professional or call text the National Suicide Hotline 988. Thanks for listening to Letters That Speak, Stories That Heal. Xai's niece Emma, outro done. Oh, ciao.